those of you don't know, you're in for a real big treat today. He's the founder of the CEO clubs locally, nationally, and worldwide. The average CEO club member around the world, and combining the U.S. as well, is a company with approximately $20 million of sales, and they've been around for probably an average of 12 years. Joe is really called an entrepreneur. The club itself has thousands and thousands of members, and what's really interesting is people over the years, all the years Joe has written his books and been a speaker and done workshops, people have paid over $100 million to hear from him. It's really interesting. Also, he's traveled to China 15 times in the last 8 years and brought over 500 CEOs to openings of chapters, whether they're in China, whether they're in India, Dubai, wherever they may be. His books and tapes have been heard or read by more small business people than any other management author in the world. And that's a quote from Simon & Schuster, which is one of the best publishers, really, in the country. He's also edited or written 28 books. 10 of those books are classified as backlist books, which means that they sell the same amount of copies year after year after year, almost like having an annuity. Pretty good. That's why you run to the mailbox so often. Now I know. Been in Success Magazine, Inc. Magazine, Harvard Business Review, the Journal of Marketing, and the Journal of Small Business. And his materials about business plan preparations have outsold all other authors combined. I find really interesting, Joe also has an electrical engineering degree from Worcester Polytechnic University. Also has an MBA from Harvard Business School. One of his classmates way back when in the 60s was Lou Gerstner, became chairman of IBM. Also has a doctorate from Boston University in educational administration. He was the former chairman of management department at Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts before launching the CEO clubs back in 1977. Joe doesn't know about this, but I got him a little something.
Oh.
Amanda did this for us. I tell you that right now. Does a tremendous job. Let me read this to you, Joe. Presented to Dr. Joseph R. Mancuso, founder, in recognition of your outstanding contributions in advancing and mentoring business leadership through your creation of the CEO clubs, author of 28 books, numerous articles published internationally, presented by me, Doug Strauss, president of the CEO Club of Baltimore.
And one of
Right here, fellas, looking right here. Good. One more. Good.
Little something for you, sir.
my friend.
It's been really my privilege to know this fine gentleman for, over 30 years now. Interesting story. Dick and I were talking about it at the table. Dick and I used to drive down to D.C. The meetings were from 10 to 2. So we were to drive all the way down. It would take up a whole day. I hear from a lot of people, oh, it's too long. Now we shorten it to elongated lunch. But after many years, I said to Joe, you got to open up Baltimore. It's a great, great town, great city. And after a couple years, he kept on hearing me all the time, every time we talked about it. And he finally brought me up to New York. He says, I got some good news and I got some bad news. I said, what's that? He said, the good news, we're opening up Baltimore. The bad news, I want you to run it. That's the honest truth. Joe, what made you start? You were chairman of the management department at WPI. You had a great job. You were writing your books. What made you stop and say, hey, I'm going to start the CEO clubs?
Give me a minute just to reflect on that long introduction, which is half made up. When you said he wrote 28 books and sold several million copies, you didn't also say that if you would put his book by your bedside, you would not need to take Ambien. Just read 5 pages. You're sleeping. How to write a winning business plan. 7 pages. Sleep. And my friends always kid me. So 2 million, and then how to start finance, blah 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 blah. All the same books, and I wrote a book a month. that's tough work for a short sprint, like 7 years. But they always were designed to be read. If you needed to read it, you surely would read it, but you would never want to be on an airplane going across the country. So when I decided to retire a few years ago, I live now in a retirement community, assisted living in Manhattan. If you haven't got into that routine, you'll soon learn that there are 5,000 of them in the country. And I had bought this long-term care insurance, knowing that I had 6 kids. And the lady who sold it to me, who I only met that one day, said, when you get older, he said, which of those 6 kids do you want to live with when you're older? And then I said, how much is the... And so I bought the best policy they could do, and I didn't know what long. I thought it was like life insurance. I said, geez, I buy any more life insurance, they're going to get together and kill me right now and get the cash. I don't want any life insurance. I never heard of long-term care insurance. So for the first 25 years paying into the policy, I had no idea what the hell it was about. And my mother went to one of these facilities, then I got to understand. So I'm privileged to live probably in the nicest apartment in the nicest long-term facility in the world. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, a river view of the George Washington Bridge. And I'm still bothered by the fact that of all those goddamn books, nobody wants to read any of them. 2 million's a lot of people that turn down your book. What would happen, but I would be positioned next to the next guy in the long-term care, who is a writer for a boxing magazine. And I knew him because I follow boxing, and I went to a Roberto Duran fight at the Garden once, and I met him, and blah, blah. And he knew who I was because he had read a book, and he said, I always wanted to write a book. I said, yeah, why don't you write a book? Long story short, he wrote every word in my new book called COs Are a Little Crazy. And I give you a guarantee, if you read that one, you can't stop reading it. It starts out with Doug Strauss, America Online. Price opening of the shares was $11. And we were allowed 2,000 shares each. This genius bought 2,000 shares, $22,000. I bought 2,000, I think it were 12 or 14 of us. One guy.
Wait a minute, I got to interrupt you. Jim Kimsey, who was a member with us and Dick, he goes, I'll give you the family and friends stock, but I want you, please, to hold it. You're not going to lock you up. A lot of times with an IPO, it's a 6-month lockup. I'm not going to lock you up, but be a friend and don't sell the stock at the opening because you usually get a bump.
Those are flippers, not us.
So we bought the stock. Stock jumped immediately 4 points. I remember like this, I called Joe up. Joe, what should we do? Sell! It was Joe that made me sell.
So we made $8,000. Now, if your numerator is 8,000, and the amount of money I put up is 0, you'd put the numerator 8,000, the denominator, that's infinity. I know, I checked. John Spargo, who's still alive and running his company in Washington, D.C., I fixed up Jim Kimsey with
Mayflower.
I want you to buy the book. COs Are a Little Crazy. And you can get it online for $10 from download. And when you download that section, you'll hear Jim's talk in Baltimore. You can read the story and then click, because it's a computer, and you'll hear Jim give his talk here. Anyway, Spargo, he understood what Jim did, and he bought 15,000 shares at the opening at $15. He made $50 million. And I made an infinite amount of money at $8. So I only wanted you to know that these 2 geniuses don't know a damn thing about money. Anyway, well, we sure had a good time. And you know, one of the things that triggered my writing of that book was Jim was a personal friend. Later, we traveled the country together. He bought my air tickets everywhere. He stayed at the Pierre Hotel. You know, I used to go into the Pierre Hotel, stop at the door. You know, I know that I'm not allowed in. And he was really a good friend. That night before the IPO, I fixed him up with a woman who was called the Mayflower Madam. And she was a super hooker, not just she was Mayflower. She came over on the Mayflower, her family. So she was related to everybody, and Jim dated her for a week.
But she was just the administrator. She was not.
Oh no, she wasn't pretty. She said but Jim was interested in one. She fell in love with him, but she said, I got one that's drop dead gorgeous. Jim wanted her number. Anyway, what sad news is about a year ago, Jim died. And he was a kickboxer.
Ranger.
He was a ranger. And you know, you look, I always been overweight. And you know, I never picked the right food. If you put the food out, I always know, just don't ever eat what I choose. And he was a terrific talent. I mean, you know, he hired Steve Case, who was Dan Case's brother. And it moved me when he died. By the way, he lived on, what's the famous river, Potomac River in Washington, next door to Queen Noor from Jordan.
Right.
You know, and they were dating. And he would go to the party with the Queen of Jordan. He was a hell of a guy. And then about 4 or 5 other really high-profile types who I wrote about in this book died. And a couple of my other good this week in my Dallas chapter, Dr. Bill Ray, Stuart Mercer died. And I'm supposed to be the one that dies. I'm the one that's overweight and got high blood sugar, blah, blah, blah. How come you can still walk? And that really triggered me to say, okay, let's write the book. I'll tell you what the deal is, boxing writer. You write the whole damn book. I'll give you the story, you write the book. And all I do is sign it. It's like Picasso used to do. Picasso do a picture, some guy come in and draw the same picture, Picasso. One day do about 10 signatures and go home. That was his work. And that's how this book was written. So you want to take a look at it. It's called CEOs Are a Little Crazy. And they are crazy. So enjoy that.
But let's digress a little bit.
Yeah.
What made you start the CEO clubs? You were chairman of the department. You know, you were tenured. You had it made. What made you say, hey, I don't like this security anymore. I want to do something else?
You know, I really was lucky, made a little money early in life. I made enough money really that I didn't have to work, and I was like 25. And that's a bad thing because then you get all screwed up. And I became chairman of the Department of Management at that school, and I knew I wasn't going to be a faculty member very long. I couldn't stand going to the meetings of the faculty. And I used to do speaking for YPO. Probably spoke 20 times. And I got to know YPO all over the country. I mean, I was a speaker. And I thought, gee, then that's a good business. And I would just tell you, the only other organization like us is those folks. And I will tell you outright, they are as good as you get. Their renewal rate's 80%. Our renewal rate is 80%. There are a lot of groups, a lot of these groups, but there's only one other like us, YPO. And YPO not only had America, I did all of America. You know, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Dallas, Chicago, Boston, Washington. America's easy. China has got 1.4 billion. How the hell are you going to do that? Then if you get China, you ever go to India? Another 1.4 billion. So we now have 90% of the world's economies as members of the club. I think there are 18 other countries, Korea, Japan, Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, Dubai, you know. And we're all going to get together in about a month in Dubai And Dubai is Disneyland for big guys. You know, when your kids were little, they wanted to go to Disneyland. If you go to Dubai, it's fun. And Pakistan's coming, everybody's coming, and we're just going to have and we don't just stay at the hotel. Now, Doug told me about this Breakers Hotel in Florida that you've all known about. Well, you know, in Dubai, they got this thing called the Burj Al Arab, $2,600 a night if you can get it.
$75 just to look at the inside of where the registration is desk, if you just want to do that.
So I kept the key to the room.
And you think the same room's going to be open?
And if you want to go to the lobby of the Dubai, they charge you $75. But if you can show them a key. Anyway, this trip, we're not doing the Burj. We're not doing it, you know, big. We're doing the boss guy there, Mohammed. He just bought the QE2. You know, you ever sail on the Queen Mary or any of those? The QE2, before the Queen Mary, was really an elegant ship. And he put it on permanent dock in Dubai. So we're the first group, all of our group, is going to meet on the QE2. So, you know, it's a dead ship. They, you know, took the engines out, put new stairs. And so that's the first international meeting we've ever had. And I always send notes out, please come. And out of this group, I always get 3 or 4 people. What's his name coming? David's coming this time. But when you see these nutty invitations from me, pick one. The next after this, we're going to do South Africa. We're going to do a safari. If you haven't done a safari, you don't want to die before you do a safari. I mean, my God, I think I did 3 safaris. And the game plan is if you're a graduate, you know, you get a Harvard MBA, you can put that little thing up on the wall, you get a 25% raise. Or you could take this one here called I Saw the Big 5. If you go on a safari, they give you, if you see the Big 5, you know, the elephant, the giraffe, boom, boom, boom. I got 3 of them. And I went on 3 safaris, saw the Big 5 3 different times. I always sat with guys who've been on 11, 12 safaris, never saw one of the Big 5. So if you can get a chance, we're going to do that probably in February, March. That's a huge South Africa deal. And we do all these nutty things, 30 trips to China. Come. Worst case, you could always come home. You know, you've already got your return ticket. Best case, 50% of the people who have come with me, over 1,000, have got a business deal with someone they never could believe that they would even meet, you know? Because they're doing plaques. There's somebody in China that love your plaque, with that plaque. And if you would do the plaques for them and they would do the plaques for you, you know, you probably make it be able to, and then you'd go there and they'd come here. It's fun. And so I'm lucky. Yep. So how did I do that? I started the CEO Club because I saw YPO. I said, now that's a smart business. I'm going to do YPO worldwide, and I'm just going to get rid of the Y, because that's bad news. They age discriminate. Right. You get kicked out before you're 40. That's what I call the lucky sperm club. If your father and mother made a lot of money, it's easy to get rich before you're 40. If you're like me, you have to wait 80, 90 years. But that CEO Club is patterned after YPO.
But Joe, you obviously, all your travels and all the times with all the clubs around the world, you know, we know Jim Kimsey, Steve Case, Ted Turner, you name, you know, all the guys. What do you think makes for a good or a great CEO? What can somebody take away here in terms of, you know, hardcore thing? What makes somebody rise to that stature?
You know what really moved me? I wrote a book about Steve Jobs. We did a movie. CEO Club did the movie with Ashton Kutcher called Jobs.
That was a terrible movie, I hate to tell you.
I know. Well, it cost $21 million. The guy who did it, member club, Mark Holm, lost $1 million. I mean, you know, it's a bitch when you work your ass off and you lose $1 million. You know, you could stay home and break even. the guy in China took the Jobs movie and they made 84 million, okay? Now, if you ever watch Jobs do the speech at Stanford, he only spoke once at one college graduation. I can almost give you the quote. It opens something like this. I mean, it'll touch you. It starts out, here's to the crazy ones. Here's to the square pegs who can't fit in the round hole. Here's to the oddball who doesn't fit. Pop, 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 pop. And it makes you cry when you hear it. He said, those jackasses are probably thinking they can change the world. And you know, every so often, one of them does. It's a nice speech. And I use that at the front end of my CEOs Are a Little Crazy book. And that was an inspiration for me. Hey, this guy's 56 years old when he dies. And you know why? Because he didn't have the brains to go get the surgery. You know, he thought he's going to get out of it by eating fruit and apples. You know, you're not totally with it. There's probably the greatest CEO of all time.
How many people read that book, read Steve Jobs' book? I mean...
Oh, no, you read the one by the big guy.
Iannucci.
Oh, yeah, that's a good book. The guy out in the Alpine, you know, yeah.
The book is so great because at the beginning part of the book, I mean, Jobs did everything wrong. I'm talking about from a management perspective. I mean, he would berate people in front of everybody. I mean, he was like an ogre. And then the second half of the book, when he comes back, Isaacson has you crying. I mean, just he makes the comeback and takes Apple, you know, and it just grows and grows and grows. I mean, what a dichotomy. What a learning. I mean, that's what we're talking about. What makes for a good or a great
Little
CEO?
bit
Why did he learn?
crazy. Just remember, I didn't say you had to be totally crazy. You should have got the surgery. You don't have to be totally crazy, but being a little bit crazy, doing the little thing that don't make sense. You know, you did the numbers and it doesn't work. Like this guy, Mark Holm, put $21 million into making the movie Steve Jobs. And he said, Joe, how do you think I'm going to do? I said, I think you're going to make 50 million, 100 million. Everybody's going to see it, you know? I went to the premiere, and then I went to the first night, you know, to see. There was 11 other people in the room. And I said, do you know Mark Holm, any of you guys? It was a crappy movie. Ashton Kutcher doesn't know how to act.
It was horrible. It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen, I hate to say it. Now, the other Jobs movie was great.
That one won the Academy Award. Right. Now, see, be a little crazy. What Mark Holm did, you don't know. So give him a little risk here. I mean, he put $21 million of his own money and lost $1 million. It shows the writer, whoever the writer is, Joe Smith. Well, let me tell you who really wrote that Jobs movie that was so crappy. His son. Changed his name. His son was John Holm. So took his maiden name, mother's maiden name. Changed his name because he didn't want people to know that his son had written the movie. And then the movie flops. There's pressure on his son. Well, when you are crazy, like we all are here, you got to be careful when you're choosing among the crazy alternatives, because not all of the crazy alternatives change the world. Many of them, you lose your shirt. And this guy lost $1 million. But he kept the rights to China. The guy in China, I met him, the guy who bought the rights. He wants to know if I got any other friends. He made $84 million on a movie here that made zip. Anyway, that movie was big in China. 5 weeks at #1 spot. Because the Chinese don't know the Steve Jobs story.
But again, CEO clubs or CEOs, presidents, they're a little bit crazy. Maybe they're risk takers, whatever they are. What is one or two characteristics that you see across the board that, is it that they're able to take risks, that they're not afraid to dive in? What is it that you've seen that you can put your finger on?
I've been 30 years friends with this guy. We talked a lot on the phone. And, I'm going to tell you, he loves every damn thing he does. If it's golf, oh my God, he gets it. You ever see him play tennis? He's a nut on it. He loves it. And when the CEO club runs meetings, he gets more excited about the damn meeting He calls me up, tells me about the meeting, tells me what happened, whatever. And he just loves it. And I think if you're, whatever it is you're doing, if you really love it, you know, that's really all that counts. I mean, you really never get bored, you never die, because you get up in the morning, you're going to do something you love. You don't go to work. My poor father had 2 jobs in his life, and every day he went to work, and we had 2 weeks vacation, in the summer. I never had a job. And the reason was my father had 2 jobs and he didn't like them. I thought, shit, if I get a job, I'm not going to like it. At 3. So I never got a job. I started the CEO clubs right out of the Worcester Polytech teaching. And surely somebody would have fired me. I don't know if I ever even told you, Mike Milken, when he bought, you know who he is, wanted to buy the CEO clubs, and I met with him. And after the discussion, I said to him, you know, Mr. Milken, this is before he was arrested, before he went to jail as a crook. I said, how many years would it be before you would fire me now that you have the CEO clubs? He said, I was thinking more like minutes. So I said, I'm not selling that. I won't have anything to do.
You hit it right on the head, Joe. You're exactly right. You know, you got to love what you do, and if you love what you do, you know, you never work. You know, it's the name of the game. But you know, what is 1 or 2 things you can give to our people out here? What advice would you give them? What can they do to grow their business? They love what they're doing. They're there every day. You know, somebody like Wanda's talking about slowing down, and she's getting bigger and bigger. She's just doing tremendous stuff. She continues to grow because she loves what she's doing.
One of the things that the YPO doesn't do well is PACs. In fact, I was so stupid I used to call it PAC, Presidential Advisory Council. I never voted, so I didn't know what a PAC was. As a Presidential Advisory Council is also a political action committee to most people. But boy, I'll tell you, those PACs worldwide we have, if you ever go on my site, ceoclubsworldwide.com, there's a little piece down there from Hyderabad, India, that they made a video of their PAC about 10 minutes long. They made it on, I never knew they did it. And they said it's, you know, every one of the speakers, companies, public company, 150 million, 250 million, big companies in Hyderabad, India. They say the best thing they have ever done, and it is true. You know what we're going to do in Dubai that I have in my vision? I ran a group for a long time, 20 years.
Super PAC.
Which was called the Super PAC. And what was super about it is we used to come from different cities. We came from London, Manchester, England. Sakan came from Japan. You know, it was a 20-hour ride. By the time he got here, we're going to have the meeting, he falls asleep. We say, Sakan, wake up. You know, he's from Japan. We're talking about business. He says, don't worry about that. He says, Japanese, we think best with our eyes closed. You know? And I ran that group, and we used to do the PACs over 3-day weekends at resorts. I've been to Barcelona, Banff, you know, all the places I always dreamed of going. The Super PAC used to go, and I got a chance to go. So it's a treat when you get that group together. Now, I told the Super PAC, that's it. I did 25 years. The judge said 25 years, you're free. I quit. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I told the group, there's 25 people, they would never stop getting together, that I quit. You can't quit, you're the leader of the guy group. Well, don't think that. They all meet now without me. They make jokes about me while I'm not there. The power of the mastermind group and these PACs, when we do Dubai, my new ambition in Dubai, coming up in about a month, is I'd like to get 2 from Pakistan, 2 from Romania, 2 from China, 2 from Japan, 2 from Taiwan, and I'd like to do a Super PAC. And the first one I want to do is a safari one in South Africa. And then the next one I want to do is right here in New York City, World Trade Center.
Beautiful.
You know? And I want to go to places where you say to yourself, boy, I'd love to go there. Because if you say, oh boy, I'd love to go there, you go there. And you know, the first super PAC I run of this group, which I will do, I'm going to make it free. Everybody can come for free. I don't care. I'm not doing this for money. I set it up as a 501c3 nonprofit. Money doesn't go to my kids. And I know if you give money to your kids, it's a bad thing because you take away the privilege of that child doing what they want to do. If they got money, right away they're a spoiled rich kid. And so I'm going to do my goal in the next year is to arrange this super PAC of countries. Imagine 2 guys from Bulgaria talking to 2 guys from Russia, and 2 guys from the Ukraine talking to 2 guys from Taiwan. Oh my God. You know, major companies. No, I think 20 million will be the minimum. Target will be about 100 million.
We got people talking about trips. We got people here that went to Cuba with us. Where's my Cuban revolutionary?
You know, I never went.
I know, you missed a big time.
Well, now it's hard to go. You know that,
We
right?
opened it up. We opened Cuba.
They opened it up 45 days after we left.
Well, I mean, now you can go, but you can't, you got to stand on your head to go now, right? Trump changed the rules. Obama said, opened it up. And, you know, I've thought about going over there just by myself. It would be typical. I would just go. But, you know, if you go with a group, it's just
No. We had
not
a
like
great
the
time.
same. Not like go by yourself.
We had a great time. I'm going to open it up to the audience for some questions for Joe. Who has some questions? Okay, while they're thinking about it, we've had Frank Abagnale. Who saw the movie Catch Me If You Can? That was Frank Abagnale was here before the movie. We thought he was conning us that he was going to have a movie. You heard Frank Abagnale. We've heard T. Boone Pickens. We've heard Ted Turner. We've heard Steve Forbes. You know, we've had the gamut of speakers. You know, New York and in Baltimore.
Remember Joe Sugarman?
Joe Sugarman, right? Mastermind. Who is your favorite all time? And you know, who do you think?
Oh, my hero in life is Fred Smith
Federal
from Federal Express. I don't know if you know all the bad things he did. Oh my God, he did terrible things. If you ever know his full life, his father was transportation business in Memphis, and he had 2 sisters from other fathers, so half sisters. And when the Federal Express started, it was a stupid idea. You fly all the packages to Fred's hometown. You know, if you're going to ship to Newark, to New York, you got to ship through Memphis. Well, you look, just take it across the bridge. You know what I mean? Let's not make a big deal out of this little shitty package this big. I mean, Fred, come on. He only got a C grade in college on his paper because professor looked at it and said, you know, that's not that. And then he took the money from his sister's, you know, retirement savings account and put it into the Federal Express, which was broke because he needed the money. And then after he used up that sister's money, he took the second sister. He did all the bad things. And they sued him criminally. He deserved it. And the day they went to trial, the stock had hit 50. And I think that sister had so many men that wanted to marry her that they couldn't keep the count. So you know that little notion I gave you earlier about crazy? My first hero was Fred Smith. Second was Ted. So I'll give you the last story on Ted. I don't know if you like these people or not, but you'd have to say he was crazy. In 1991, he addressed the club in New York, and he was married to Jane Fonda. Atlanta Braves have won the World Series. He had a $9 billion net worth. And they came to the Harvard Club. And by the way, Jim Kimsey and Steve Case from Washington came up, and they were in the audience. And he rushed into the Harvard Club 500. We filled up the middle room and the north room. Then we had a TV camera up in the other room, and over there, a TV camera. So if you were privileged, you sat in the main room. And he threw his coat down, he ran up to the microphone, and not everybody was seated. Everybody ran and got a seat. And if you could hear this on the tape, so if you turn on the Ted Turner tape, you'll like it. He says, you know, Mancuso asked me to come up here, pay my own way. Didn't pick me up at the airport. Never offered me any taxi fare. Never sent me a damn penny. That cheap son of a bitch said he just wanted me to talk for free. And now I have nothing prepared. He says, I'm just so busy. I'm going to this meeting and that meeting, and this meeting, that meeting. He says, anybody here got a question? First guy stands up, says, blah, blah, blah. And Turner says, sit the hell down. That's not a question. Anybody got a real question? And I think he and Fred Smith, for me, my own personal heroes, if you follow their lives, you see the bumps. You know, Turner lost on the purchase of the AOL. You know, AOL bought Time Warner. At that time, Turner's net worth was $9 billion. He hired Michael Milken to examine whether he should do this transaction called AOL. Milken, just out of prison, said it's a good deal. And Turner lost on that deal, on the Time Warner AOL deal, $8 billion out of 9. So you had $1 billion left. You know, when you got 9 and you got only $1 billion left, it's a big deal. Having $1 billion all by itself, then you're really king of the mountain. But it's tough to take an $8 billion hit. I would say, of all the speakers, of all the people I've enjoyed, I got a nice chapter on him in this book, is a terrific talent. You know, he had to win the America's Cup. I mean, my God, imagine getting on that boat like Larry Ellison and trying to, oh my God.
Yeah, but he was so great when Ted Turner spoke. You know, he got up there, said what he said, but he goes, Ted, what kind of advice can you give us? Somebody had a question. Finally, we had a good question. Ted goes, early to bed, early to rise. Work like hell, but advertise.
You remember that?
I remember that. I love that. Wanda and Kevin. Ladies first.
Not yet.
So, Joe, I have been working for 50 odd years.
She started when she was 7.
I started when I was 7. But I've been in the staffing industry for 30 couple years. I believe you started the CEO Club 35 years ago, or how long?
1977.
41.
41 years ago. Overall, I can only speak to the staffing industry, but overall, all different types of business, what's the biggest change that you've seen in those 41 years?
Boy, I'll tell you, this American system that we have, the management system in America, is better than any other system. I'm going to use the Chinese as an example. You know, in China, the way and I know all the mayors, all the party secretaries, everybody. This little thing that's going on right now, this morning I got here early. I wanted to hear the Supreme Court Justice's, the woman's complaint. So I sat in and listened for an hour. She sounds pretty damn credible to me, you know, the hour I listened, so it's going to be interesting. But what we do here is we think things over and we take two positions. You know, you could be sure not one Democrat would change the vote in a million years to go this way. You could be sure not one Republican. The way they do it in China is different. They all sit on the table, and then when it comes time to make a decision, they all lean over and look down, and they find out what one guy is going to do, the big guy at the end. And he's now they got this guy for life, you know. That is a tough system. You have to be awful talented to do that. Our little crazy back and forth, back and forth, back and forth is a better system because it emerges the best idea and the best method. Look, I mean, our GDP this year for 4.1, holy shit. I mean, you know, we keep that up, we could be growing, you know. China's whole economy isn't equal to California. I mean, you know, they grow 6-8%. How about this country grew 6-8%? You know what happened? Everybody'd have jobs. I mean, we'd be booming. At 4%, we're doing pretty damn good. My 401k is really very happy, and so is yours. I'd say the system we have in this country of teaching, of sharing ideas, of working, of arguing. You know, this woman's going to come on now. There's a good chance this guy's not going to make it to the court. That would never happen in another country. Might happen in this country. I think that makes our country, and that's why I'm proud to be first an American, and then a citizen of all the other world. I think we got the better system. I hope that answers your question.
That answered your question, one? Kevin?
As a entrepreneur, I won't say I'm a CEO or president or anything, but through the years I've had people come and work with me, and I've stressed that to them, that you don't work for me, I'm only as good as you allow me to be. You work with me, we're a team, and I give them skin in it to aspire to achieve, to go beyond what's required. I've stressed honor, integrity, and character. It costs you nothing, but they can cost you everything. But I think a real leader is someone who inspires. But the great leaders inspire so deeply that the minions aspire to be them. My question is, what single traits or couple of traits are the engine that you see consistently having people aspire to be like their boss or their leader?
Oh, I know that question well because I wrestle with it. I have a bad habit of whenever I have a twosome and I got to pick between the twosome, I always pick the wrong
I'm
one.
a French guy, so you know where I'm going.
Or if there's a food, you know, there's a fattening food and the good food, I always get, you know, I mistake my fork. A good leader has people grow confident in the leader. A great leader has people grow confident in themselves. And, you know, it's a hard concept. Hard concept. It doesn't sink in right away.
So, to go back, and this is the interview thing, what you're saying to me is that we're consistently letting our people do what they do best in order to grow within themselves, to have confidence, to take the step when they don't see the step. And that's where they actually do grow. Is that
Well said. That's really the concept.
okay? Thank you.
And then, you know, it's really fun to see the dialogue in the morning meeting that Doug runs and think that, you know, is occurring all over the world in all these different kinds of CEO groups. It really helps. There are a lot of people who never join a CEO kind of group that I know. And I really think they, you know, miss part of the whole process of life. And if you look at my letterhead, you see there's a picture of Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, John Burroughs, and Harvey Firestone together on a Ferris wheel, a water wheel. Well, you know, I'm starting a CEO club. I saw that picture. I mean, there's a little group of CEOs that changed the world, right? Well, I went up to see that water wheel. I knew there was a water wheel. I had to go find it. It's in Sudbury, Massachusetts. You seen it?
Grew up there, the grist mill.
Yeah, that's right. And that picture, I mean, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, John Burroughs, Harvey Firestone. I mean, if they were doing it, when Carnegie died, he gave Napoleon Hill a lot of money to write the book, Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill wrote that book for 10 years, sold hundreds of millions of copies. And if you haven't read it, it's a classic. I read it again now. And essentially what Napoleon Hill found, if you know, shorten it up, is that the really good guys have a little team, a cadre of close advisors, people they share with, and how they interact. You know, I'm disappointed I got more members in China than I got in the United States. And we get a Chinese group together, son of a bitch if they don't, all have the same problem, they only want applause. No, none of them have a problem. All right, who's got a problem? Nobody's got a problem. And they don't have that ability that America has. Other countries have a similar problem to China, not like the United States. If my group, Super PAC, got together and Dennis has a lawsuit with his father over this newspaper plant in Newark, New Jersey, well, over your father, how are you going to win a lawsuit against your father? If you win, you lose, and if you lose, you lose, you know? We can talk it over. You know, we can do that. Chinese and other cultures don't have that openness and ability that we do, and I think that's why our country is the largest economy in the world, and we do better, and that's why we're exporting our management skills to other countries. And they don't catch on immediately, but they catch on pretty quick.
And that, if you haven't read Napoleon Hill, that one chapter, I believe it's chapter 9, Think and Grow Rich, the power of the mastermind. And that's what he's talking about. That's really the essence of the PAC.
That's where I got the idea from the PAC. It's 6 pages long, that little chapter. When I first read it when I was 24, I said, this guy's a flake. You know, if you have one mind, you got one mind. If you got 2 minds, you got 4 minds. If you got 3 minds, you got 9 minds. Let me reread that. You know? What? That helped. Yeah, go ahead.
So you've done a remarkable job in 40 years, and like any organization that has strong leaders, it takes on sort of the tenor of the leader. None of us are going to be here for 200 years, so the question really is, 40 years from now, what does the CPO club look like, and how do you continue Joe Mancuso?
My wife asks me that all the time, you know. And I say, I'm so glad that I can still walk without a walker, you know. The strongest chapters I have are in China. You know, the United States and China are terribly competitive. Right now they're going through, we're charging them $500 billion for this, and then we're charging them $700 billion for that. We're fighting and all. But in the end, it'll all settle down. Everybody will get along after it adjusts. My team in China is the strongest team. And not everybody likes them. I'm easier to like, believe it or not. And I think they will be the group that dominates Pakistan, Dubai, India, Saudi Arabia, the Chinese group. And I think if you do 5 or 10 year future, I think they're going to be a bigger economy than us. You know, I don't like to say that. But they're very, very industrious, committed, focused, and they really got a lot of money and people. Not so in India. We got a wonderful chapter. You'll see that video I told you about in India. India is a democracy, and they suffer from the problem of Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, was he the best choice to run California? Really? I mean, he had no idea what the hell he was doing. He'd call Warren Buffett up and say, Warren, they want to know if I should sign this bill. He's doing everything with the maid, and he's not the best choice. You know, in China, if you get to be a mayor, they have a mayor's school. I love this. I taught at the school. You're a little mayor. The way it works in the communist system is little mayors become bigger mayors. It's called the Communist Party. And every time you move up, most of the time you move over, you don't move up. But move up, you go 2 weeks, 4 weeks to school. And they're taught by the other mayors, the preceding mayors. So they pass on the wisdom to the other people. What do we do? What does India do? India chooses a president, somebody named Gandhi. That's not necessarily the best choice. What do we do in California? We pick Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not saying he's the worst choice, but there are people who could run the country better. Jamie Dimon, I think, is brilliant. You know, Chase Bank. And Mike Bloomberg. you know.
Any other questions we got? Yes, sir.
My question for you, Joe, is can you share with the room some of your biggest challenges as an entrepreneur throughout the years? Things that you encountered that were challenging, and how did you overcome those biggest challenges?
Good question.
Running out of money was always the biggest problem, you know what I mean? This goes on now, right now. Well, you really, you know, as you get older, you tend to accumulate money, and you always accumulate money. And so you're really safe. But when you were really broke and then you took the chance and you had no money to back it up, you know, your fallback position was broke or homeless or whatever that is. That's why it's not good to leave your kids money. You know, if you leave your kids money, they don't ever face the fact that they might be homeless. You know what I mean? My father's going to bail me out of that one. And if you give a guy enough of everything else, they'll make it out of the trouble. You know, I think that the biggest problem always has been for all of us is building it in such a way that we're going in the forward direction. You know, John Aaron used to say, when you die, make sure you fall forward. So, you know, I always lean up whenever I'm anywhere, just in case I'm going to die at that moment, I'm ready for John. But that's the same concept, you know, fall forward and don't stop. And that's the Trump, never stop. CNN used to do at night, up. Well, no way the guy can get to 270. The next night, same guy had a blackboard. No way. Trump didn't pay any attention to that stuff. He had his own little counter and his own little blackboard, and he knew he was going to do, you know, better. And never gave up. And you know, last night on the election, the last hour of the last day, he took one more trip. You know, it was like 10 o'clock at night, come home, watch TV, ready to see the results. No, not Trump. He took it, one more. Come on, we can stop over here. You know, you don't need to get those last 50 votes, but he had that attitude, and that was a winner.
So never, ever give up. Winston Churchill, you know, keep on trying. Perseverance, critical thing. Last question.
My favorite one for Winston Churchill is that Americans always do what's right after they try all the other alternatives.
Yes, sir.
I've been fortunate enough to rub some shoulders with some pretty successful people. One of them has the largest staffing agency in the world. And he knows a little bit about football, but
Is that Wanda you're talking about?
he knows a little bit about football, but he's smart enough that he doesn't know enough about football, so he lets football people run his business now. I asked him to mentor me, and he put me in the direction of 5 books. The first book that he stressed was the Bible. The second one was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
By Covey. Great book.
Keep going. What's 4 and 5?
I try to live that thing. And in those terms, how important is it to try to integrate those 7 habits into people that you're working with or they are working with you? I mean, the greatest habit is seek first to understand and then to be understood. We need to do more listening than talking.
And another great one is think with the end in mind. He actually, how many people have read that book?
Habit 2.
Haven't. I mean, to me, that was unbelievable. He had you visualizing your own funeral and what are people saying about you. You talk about how powerful that is. I mean, you know, you're there, you're overseeing it and seeing what people are saying about you. I mean, it doesn't get any powerful. Joe?
How much influence should somebody be putting those concepts, those 7 habits, with anyone around them, nurturing relationships as a whole?
You know, you mentioned those 5 great books. You see, when you go to these other countries, they don't have the history of these 5 great books. They don't have the history of Steve Jobs. They don't have the history of Ted Turner. They don't have Steve Covey. What they got is Buddha. Or they got the other one, the one I really get to like is India India says, $1.4 billion, that you come back. Hindu is you come back. I sort of like it. I'm thinking about shifting now that I'm older. So I got a shot at coming back,
Good job. Good job.
Yeah, and I think those other countries just don't have this fortunate history of what we have. They don't have Thomas Edison and Henry Ford. Henry Ford, crackpot, went broke. He went broke, bankrupt twice. Milton Hershey, Hershey
Same thing.
candy bars,
Twice.
Yeah, I like it when it's twice. Once, you made a mistake. Twice, now you're going, boy.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating when people, and the Hershey situation, everybody read that book. I mean, he lost all of his family's money, father, mother, in-laws, everybody. And to come back, and again, that's back to that perseverance, never giving up. It's so powerful. Joe Mancuso, everybody.